Welcome back to Happy Apple Core Homestead. Today we're going to make a batch of cucumber chips. This is a tested recipe, but I have adapted it somewhat, and I will let you know as we go the changes that I'm making. This is a water bath recipe, so you will need a water bath canner that has a rack on the inside. You will also need cucumbers. I have about 10 pounds here. By the end, we'll know if 10 pounds is the right amount or not to fill my 7 jars, because the main recipe only does 3 pints and I want to do a full batch, which is 7 pints. So I'm going with just over 10 pounds of cucumbers here. I also have some pickle crisp, and this is optional. You don't have to use it, and it's not part of the original recipe. I have some fresh ginger here. We have cinnamon sticks, ground turmeric. You could use fresh if you wanted to, but ground works great and it imparts a beautiful color. These are whole cloves. And then we have mustard seed. It doesn't really matter if you use the brown ones or the golden ones, but I'm using the golden ones today. You will also need canning salt. Please do not use iodized table salt. It will make your cooking liquid cloudy. So this is the canning salt that I use. And here I have honey. The original recipe calls for sugar. I try to only use honey, especially where I can exchange it, and I will be doing a 1-to-1 sugar to honey ratio. So that means if the recipe says 1 cup of sugar, I'm going to use 1 whole cup of honey. Down in the description box, I will write the tried and true tested recipe from the ball book, and I will also write how I adapted it for myself here. As far as the processing time, all of that is going to be the same. I haven't messed with that. Really, the only adaptation that I've done to this recipe is exchanging the sugar for the honey and using the pickle crisp. Also, you're going to need some vinegar, 5% acidity. You will need some jars with the matching lid that goes with it. I'm using wide mouth, so I'm using wide mouth lids. Also, you're going to need a bowl and something to cut your cucumber chips with. I like this one. It has ridges and it's fun, but you can just use a plain knife if you want to. Now that we know all of the equipment and ingredients we're going to need, we're going to wash our cucumbers and we're going to get started with cutting them. It's important that you cut the entire blossom end off, but we will also be cutting the stem end off as well. All right, the cucumbers are washed and now it is time to get them cut. I really like this type of a cutter. It's wavy and it makes the cucumbers look pretty cool. Gonna cut both ends off. These ends go to my chickens, but you can eat them. There's nothing wrong with them. Then you're going to slice your cucumber. I don't mind if mine are a little bit on the thick side, but you can cut them thinner than this if you want to. And then into the bowl they go. As you get a layer here, you're going to sprinkle some salt right over the top. All of our cucumbers have been sliced. Some of them are quite large, so I got out a knife just to make sure I could get them the right size. This little buddy is wonderful, and I love, love, love the texture that it makes, but it doesn't do that good with big cucumbers. My bowl is not big enough, and I do still have quite a bit more salt that I need to get on these cucumbers, so I'm going to get another bowl We're gonna make sure that all of the cucumbers are coated in the salt. And then what's gonna happen is I'm going to put these cucumbers very well coated in salt into the refrigerator overnight. Now the recipe only calls for 3 hours, but it's getting late in the evening here and I have a few other things I need to do. I want to caution you, leaving these in the refrigerator overnight is not the same as brining them, even though yes, they are in salt. Brining and fermenting cucumbers is a completely different process that takes much longer than 24 hours. Leaving them in the refrigerator will keep them fresh. It will allow the salt to continue to draw the moisture out of the cucumbers, and then we can get started again in the morning. I would not leave these on the counter overnight. That in fact could cause some fermentation or spoilage, especially if you're watching this and trying to do this in the summertime, like I am, which is usually when our cucumbers are ready to harvest. Here's what the cucumbers look like after not quite 24 hours in the refrigerator with the salt. And let's see, can you see all this water? It's just full of water. All of that water is actually juices that have been extracted from the cucumber. And our next step is to take these over to the sink and give them a good rinse. We're back and all of these cucumbers are rinsed off. I just have them hanging out here in this pot, and it doesn't need to be in a pot. It's just what I have available. I've got so many different projects going on right now that all of my bowls are used up. In this one here, we're going to start some of the cooking liquid. This is a unique recipe. It's different than the average ones that I do, and it has a little bit more steps to it. So we are going to do 6 cups of vinegar. And 8 cups of water. And 2 tablespoons of turmeric. Then we're going to take this over to the stove, give it a good stir, and bring it to a boil. The brine has come to a boil, so we're going to go ahead and turn that off. Give it one last stir. And then we're going to pour this liquid over the top of the cucumbers. Oh, spicy in my nose. Now we're going to pop a lid on it and set it aside and let it come down to room temperature, and then we'll go to our next step. The cucumbers have cooled off, but the first thing we need to do before we do anything else with them is get the spice bags ready. I like to use these tea bags, but you can use whatever you like to hold your spices. We're gonna need a good amount of ginger, probably 2.5 to 3 inches worth. You don't have to chop it, although I do rinse mine. And we're gonna just put these in the bags, kind of cinch them up. This will prevent us from having to do a whole lot of straining later. So if you decide to buy these types of tea bags, you do want to give them a good rinse beforehand. And then you can just squeeze them like that. And then this ginger is going to go right into this pot here, and we'll move on to the other spices. Next, we're going to do 4 cinnamon sticks. That's what I have here. And those are gonna go right into the bag. If I can get my jar open. There we go. There we go. Okay, and I have 4 cinnamon sticks here. I'm actually gonna break 2 of them because they're quite long and don't quite fit into my bag. So just broke those in half, and into the little bag they go. I think we can fit everything else in here, but we shall see. We also need 2 tablespoons of the mustard seed, and I'm using the yellow mustard seed. You can use the brown ones if you like. And we do want those right into the bag. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of whole cloves. And into the bag they go. And then also with this one, you will just tie it up really nice and good. You can also tie the top, and it might behoove me to do that with the other 2 bags I have. I went ahead and put 4 good knots in each one of these spice bags. After all, the point of using them is so we don't have to strain later. So I went ahead and tied them up, and now we'll move on to the other ingredients. The first thing we will add to the spice bags is 2 cups of water and 8 cups of vinegar. You will also need either 4 cups of sugar or 4 cups of honey, which I'm using. Go ahead and put that all in. And turn your temperature up to a medium high. Bring this to a boil and keep it there for 15 minutes. Once it boils, I will bring you back and show you the next step. This is at a great boil. We're going to leave it in here for about 15 minutes, and in the meantime, let's go strain the cucumbers that are in the previous cooking liquid. I realize my kitchen is a little bit messy, but this is a working kitchen. I promise everything's sanitary. There are the cucumbers. I love this silicone strainer that my husband got me. We're going to clip it right on to the edge of the pot, and then we're going to strain out all of these juices. I'm not going to lie, I don't really understand this recipe from the Ball book. Seems like a whole lot of waste of spices, but thought I'd give it a try and show it to all of you guys. Let me know what you think. But seems a little bit like a waste to me. Anywho, we're gonna give it a try, see how they taste. Once those are strained, we're just gonna wait until the 15-minute timer is done on the second batch of cooking liquid, which we will transfer these beautiful cucumbers into that pot, and then that will sit overnight for 24 hours. The cucumbers in their first brine have been drained, and I did a taste test. They're not too salty, which the Ball book says, hey, taste them, make sure they're not too salty, and if they are, rinse them in cold water. I have questions, you guys. Why are we doing all of this extra stuff and then putting spices down the drain? I don't know. Anywho, in here, This has been cooking with the spice bags for 15 minutes. And now we're going to put all of these cucumbers right into this pot. The cooking liquid amount is perfect, and we're going to pop this into the refrigerator once it's cool enough to do so. It's super hot right now. If you have a designated refrigerator, or if you're in a very cold climate, you can just go put it outside. If you have a designated fridge with nothing else in it, go ahead and pop it in. I'm going to leave this out until it cools down just a little bit so it doesn't heat up the other things in my refrigerator. And then we're going to leave it for 12 to 24 hours, most likely 18 hours in my situation. I'm going to go ahead and put a lid on this, and I will see you after that. The cucumbers have been in the brine overnight, and now we need to strain all of the cooking liquid off into a pan, and we need to remove the spice bags from this pot. Root around in here and find those spice bags. There's one. I know there's 3 in here. All right, we found our spice bags, and we're going to want to discard those. Then we're going to put 2 cups of honey into this pot here and bring it over to the stove and get it nice and warm. Then we're going to start filling jars. I'm going to get our situation moved over there, and we'll move on to the next step. In the original recipe, this step would be brown sugar, and I am replacing the brown sugar with honey. So if you want to do it exactly the way the ball book says, you'll want to put in 2 cups of brown sugar. Here's our cooking liquid along with the honey, and we're just going to bring it up to a simmer, and then we will put it over there on that other burner. And over here we have our cucumber chips. We have a bubble popper up here. We have clean sanitized jars, a funnel, a wet paper towel here. We've got some pickle crisp, which is not part of the recipe, so this is totally optional. And then there are some clean and sanitized lids as well as rings, and those lids do not need to be boiled ahead of time. Once that gets up to a simmer, we will get started filling the jars. I do have hot water in my canner, and as soon as that is up to a simmer and gets moved to the side, we will put the canner on the stove and get the temperature going on that as well. The cooking liquid is ready, and we've got the canner over there on the stove just hanging out. It is about halfway full of water. We may need to add more because we need to have at least an inch of water above the tops of the jars. But first, let's go ahead and get these jars filled. I have my first jar here, and we will begin with 1/8 of a teaspoon of pickle crisp. We'll grab our funnel. We may not need it really, but sometimes it helps keep things clean. And we're gonna fill each jar up to the 1-inch line with the pickles. Well, I don't know if they're totally pickles yet, but the cucumbers. Okay, so we've got our cucumbers here to the 1-inch line, And we need to fill it up with the brine to the 1/2 inch mark, which is right here. Looks like I need to get up a little bit higher. That is perfect. Now we'll take our bubble popper and go around the outside of the jar and press inward toward the center. Cucumbers have quite a lot of bubbles in them. I want to get those out. And we'll take our wet paper towel and wipe the rim. And grab your bubble popper again if it has the magnetic end on it. Did I just drip on the rim? Just double check that. Okay, then we've got our lid. On it goes. And then put your ring on, just finger tight. No need to reef it down too far. And this jar can go right into the rack here. I'm going to finish up this beautiful pot of cucumbers, see how many of these jars we can fill. Remember, we had 10 pounds to begin with, and the canner holds 7 jars, pints or quarts. I'm using pints. Let's see how many I get. And it's nice and toasty warm in here, so the water is warm, the pot is warm, the jars and everything is warm, so that there won't be any type of thermal shock. I know I harp on this a lot, but if everything you're doing is cold, start with a cold canner. If everything's hot, start with a warm canner. I'm going to turn the heat on here just to a medium-low. I do like to let my canner warm up pretty slowly, but it doesn't need to go as slow as if everything was cold. And then you'll carefully pick up your rack and lower it into the water. You can put your lid on and wait to lower your rack in when the water is boiling. A lot of canners do it that way. I like to do mine ahead of time. It saves me from burning my hands on the steam, and it's perfectly safe to do it either way. So it's up to you if you want to lower it. If you want to wait until this is boiling to lower your rack in, that's fine. But this is the way I do it. And also, I can tell if I have enough water or not, which I don't. So we need to have an inch of water above the top of these jars in order for them to process safely. What I'm gonna do is grab this guy right here, and I'm gonna go over to the sink and I'm gonna run my water nice and super hot, and I'm gonna fill this up with hot water and then pour it into here. Whew. Let's see, I think that's not quite enough. I'll get a little bit more. Okay, that's plenty. 1 to 2 inches above the top is what we need. And that's what we've got. We're gonna put the lid back on, and we're gonna wait until this comes to a full rolling boil, and then we will start our timer. When it's at a full rolling boil, I will show you what that looks like, and we'll start our timer. All right, we're at a full rolling boil. That's what she looks like there. And we're gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. The timer has gone off, so we're gonna turn the burner off, and very carefully, don't forget your mitts, we're gonna move this pot very carefully over here. I know it looks like I'm sliding it, but I was picking it up. I do have a glass stovetop here. Then we're going to take the lid off, away from my face, of course. And then we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and then we will remove the jars from the canner. The timer has gone off, and we're going to very carefully remove the jars from the canner. Yes, you can pull the whole rack out if you wanted to. I don't want to stick my hands in there, so I'm gonna just do it this way. And when you pull them out, try not to tip them. The water on top of the jars will evaporate very quickly. There are the pretty jars. I have 4 more that I need to process. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then all of these are going to rest overnight to cool off on their own. Then we'll be back for the final step. A few steps left to go, and then these are ready for the pantry. Pickles are great if you can let them kind of cure for a couple of months, get all of those flavors nicely infused in there, but you can eat them right away if you want to. We want to remove all of the rings. Then we want to check that they are all sealed. So I like to do a 2-pronged effort to make sure I tap them. So if they have that kind of hollow sound, that means they're sealed. If it sounds like a thud, then it's probably not sealed. And that is especially true for things like tomato sauce and pickles and things that are not really like thick in density. If you're doing applesauce or pie filling, sometimes the food can get up and stick to the top of the lid, and you'll still hear a thud just because there's food underneath there. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not sealed, but for pickles, if you hear a thud, it's not sealed. So after I do the tap test, then I just pick the jars up by the lid, make sure that the lid doesn't slide off. And these are all sealed, which is great news. Then we're going to wipe down the little ring edges here, make sure that's all nice and clean. And we'll do that for each one of the jars. And then you're going to want to label it. This year I'm making multiple different types and styles and flavors of pickles. So I'm writing on my labels the type that I'm doing and the date. Pickles are great for like a few years and then they start to get mushy. Doesn't mean they've gone bad, but they lose their crispiness over time. So I'm probably gonna eat these within 2 years. Just because, you know, I like my pickles crispy, but that's just me. I do use dissolvable labels. They are great because they wash right off after I'm done using the jar. And that's it. It's ready for the pantry. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions at all. I will have the original recipe from the Ball cookbook down in the description box. As you know, I was inspired by that recipe, but I diverged from the main recipe in a couple of ingredients, and I will make note of that there so that if you want to follow along exactly as I did it in this video, you'll be able to easily. I hope you guys have a great day. I have lots of interesting content coming up for you, so make sure to stay tuned. Bye!